So I've got my energy usage on my dashboard here for Home Assistant. I've got 7 days worth of data. You can see here today so far we've used almost 6.5 units. We've got our energy cost for today, which is $2.66 at the moment, and instantaneous total power. So that just goes up and down with power usage. Part of that power usage is actually my pool pump. So if we turn that off, we'll see that drop down. So you see that total power drop down just by turning the pool pump off. So all this data is provided by a Shelly EM3. So let's jump in and see how we can install it and set it up and put it on a dashboard like this. Today we're going to be looking at installing a Shelly 3 EM. Now I've done a video on this before, but it wasn't an installation video. It was about, we opened it up and had a look inside and set it up in Home Assistant. Now today we're going to install this. Now this particular product is really designed for electricians to install. Here in WA, Western Australia, it's pretty much legally required. You need an electrician. And no matter where you live, it would be a very good idea that you use someone who's licensed or qualified to install it, because it's probably going to be going in a main switchboard, and there's going to be all sorts of things that could be dangerous, including large fault currents and electrocution. So this is more of an informational video about how an electrician would go about it. Some things that you might want to know. The electrician might turn up and say, oh, it can't fit for this or that reason. So we're going to cover that today in this video. So we've got the main little control unit here, the Shelly device, and that's designed to be DIN rail mounted. Now this is slightly bigger than a single DIN rail unit. You can see behind me here, they are single modules, they're 18mm wide. This here is probably 22mm wide, so it takes up 2 spaces. Or 1.5 spaces. And seems how they usually come in modules, then that's basically taking up 2 spaces. So that's the first thing to consider when you look at this device. The next thing to consider is you've got to fit 3 current transformers in. The Shelly 3 EM is for 3 phases. And if you don't have 3 phase, then you'd probably use the Shelly EM, because that's got 2 clamps and that can do your solar and your single phase. This is for 3 phase, which we have just here, is 3 phase. And these actually do take up quite a bit of space. And clipping them on and connecting to the wires can be difficult if you have a board like this. Now in Western Australia here, and I've seen them in other parts of the world, they have little switchboards like this, and this one here, there is absolutely no way I could fit this in there, just the clamps alone. Now you could install this in a box next to it, but you still would have a lot of trouble trying to fit it all in here at all. So you would need to install it somewhere else. So I'll just pop the cover off this and just show you what's inside, and we'll go from there. You can see here, this is my subboard in my shed. It has the mains coming in from out in the street, or goes via a Meterbox out at the front of my house. And it comes in here and it gets distributed to all the circuits in my house. Now, as you can see, if you wanted to clip on just one of these, it just can't fit. There's nowhere for it to go. And like I said before, it's not unusual to see a board that's full like this. It's very, very common. And if you go and look at yours in your garage, don't take the cover off, but it will probably look something, it may look something like this. Even this can't even fit anywhere. So, I mean, you could mount it to the side, but you still wouldn't be able to fit the clamps in, which are required to measure the current. So that's the first one I want to show you. So if your electrician comes along and says, I can't actually fit it in here, then they can't. There's nothing they can do about it. It has to go somewhere else. So let's go up and check out where else it could fit. So my meter box is just up here at the front of my house, and I've got a driveway all the way down to my house. And as you can see, it would fit inside of here. I do have space, and some people have this attached to their house, so they could put it in here. It would be a good spot to put it. I have installed them in meter boxes like this. And you can see here we've got the clamps, and there's plenty of room for it to go in here. Now this one has 2 rows, and they do come up to 3 rows. Now if this was full, then it would make it very difficult to fit the clamps in and the device in. Now I can't put it in here because it would be a long way away from my Wi-Fi, and it probably would drop out all the time. and it's also inside a Meterbox. And because it's so far away, it probably wouldn't work that great. So I can't put mine here either. So I'll show you where I am going to put it. So I'm going to be putting my Shelly 3 EM in here. Now, not many people would have this termination point just here. And the reason I've got it is when we were constructing the house, unfortunately someone stole my mains cable and they cut it off halfway and took half of it away, which was very annoying. And so as a result, I had to put a join, and I thought I might as well put a box here and use it for other stuff as well. So I've got my Wi-Fi point here, I've got my NBN fiber connection inside the top, and I've got my mains cable coming in. And I've got some stuff for my garden lighting and a few other bits and pieces in here. And I've got a son-off which has been going pretty good for the last 2 years. So that's I'm impressed with that. That's to control my garden lights. And so I'm going to put my Shelly 3 EM into here now. Okay, so I've just brought my little device inside to wire up some tails to it because it's like 40 degrees outside at the moment. And so that's ready to go. I've got my voltage inputs from each phase. Each phase is measured separately, and that's how it gets an accurate reading of the current in your house. And it is recommended that you connect it via a 3-phase circuit breaker, which I have. I've got a 10 amp one because you can get smaller ones, but that's the smallest I happen to have. And that goes to the load side of my main switch. And I guess you could use some inline ceramic fuses as well, bearing in mind that this draws only a very, very small amount of current, like in the 0.1 amps range, so it doesn't use much at all. But if you do use a 3-phase circuit breaker, bear in mind that's going to take up more space once again. It's going to take up 3 modules. Now you've got the 4 wires here that we need to have, neutral, and the 3 phases, and we've got these 2 here, which is a voltage-free relay. So you could connect this up to control something else, like I could control my garden lights out there. I'm not going to do that because this sign-off is working fine. And I have in the past used these to control the contactor that turns on a booster for solar hot water systems. So you can control it on a timer or via the app or via Home Assistant. So that's probably the most likely thing you would use this relay output for. And that can handle up to 240 volts, but probably not a large amount of current. So if you're switching on an element, a heating element, you probably want to connect it via a contactor. So I've got my current transformers just here. Bear in mind they're labeled ABC. I presume they're calibrated for each channel correctly. So just make sure you get them in the right channels before you rush into it, and then hook them onto red, white and blue respectively. These have a little marking to show which way to clip it onto the wire. So depending on which way the wire goes through the CT, it will either show negative or positive current. So this way or that way, the wire will pass through. And if you get it wrong, all you have to do is flip around and then you'll be in the positive. One other thing I found is if there's a solar system that's producing power, to work out which way around it goes, it's easier just to flick off the solar system while you're doing it, and then turn it on and then check that the current is all going in the positive, so you know you've got it the right way around. You can of course follow the instructions and it tells you exactly which way to put it. So in this direction you need to have the supply cable going from the house on this side to the street on this side, but that's just something to bear in mind. Let's go and stick this into our box outside and then we're going to set it up. Okay, so I've got my little device mounted, my Shelly 3 EM mounted on the standard DIN rail, which is just back here, and I've clipped it in, and I've got my tails connected into the top of this 10 amp 3-phase circuit breaker, and that's to protect the input of the Shelly 3 EM. And this circuit breaker is fed from the load side of my main switch circuit breaker, sub-main circuit breaker. And this is the mains coming in from the street, just down here from my meter box. So if this main switch here gets turned off, it'll isolate everything up above. Now this is isolated further upstream, up at the main meter box. Now, so we've got that all hooked up and ready to go. Now all we have to do is connect in our split current transformers. So we'll put on this one here first. and we've got everything hooked up. Now all we need to do is turn it on and we can go and set it up on the computer. We're going to put it into Home Assistant and we're going to have some template sensors that are going to add each of our phases up, and are going to add our energy up into one value. We're also going to set up a monthly utility sensor and also a daily utility sensor, and we are going to set up a daily power cost sensor. And if you want to check all this information out, there will be a written version on my blog. The link is in the description down below. You'll also see there how to do dual tariffs and how to adjust the utility sensors to align with your energy account. But this is what we're working on here, the Shelly 3 EM. I get them from the Shelly shop in Europe. They take about a week or so to get delivered to me here in Australia. And it comes with 3 independent channels of 120 amps each and 365 days of memory if it's not connected to Wi-Fi. So that's what we're installing right now today. And to get started doing that, we're going to simply connect to our Shelly. So hopefully your electrician has installed your device for you and it's up and running. You can connect to the access point that it has created, like so, with your computer, and then simply browse to 33.1, and we can see our device is reading power. So we're using about 5 kilowatts of power right at this second in time. So that's my air conditioner that is running. We've got our 3 phases here. So we're going to come into internet security and we are going to connect it to my Wi-Fi. So once you've connected your details and set it all up, look up your device in your router and get its IP address that it's been assigned by your router. Okay, now so we're in our Shelly 3 EM and it's connected to our Wi-Fi. So all we have to do now is come across to Home Assistant. And now to set it up, we can just come down to our configuration tab and integrations. And I've already got this set up, but it would automatically pop up here. It should be discovered if you're on the same network as your Home Assistant. If it doesn't pop up, you can do add integration, and you can simply type Shelly and go Shelly and enter the IP address of your device into here, and it should install it that way. Now, in the past, I've used Shelly for HAS. This is not the same one. This is a different one that's built into Home Assistant now, so you don't have to do anything to install it. You don't have to install the HAS store first. You don't have to do anything. It will just find it, and then you can click on install, and you're off and going. And it does work with this power monitor. So this is the power monitor here that we've just connected. And I just want to note about naming stuff. It's a very good idea to name the channels in the device, which can be done in settings. So you can give it a device name. And you can see that name has come across into Home Assistant, and it's just right there. And the same for each channel. We've got red phase, white phase, blue phase. And if we go in and have a look at our entities, we can see here that we've got our channel names are given to the entity names. So it makes it pretty easy to work out what's what. Now, you can see here that I've disabled down the side here. I've disabled a number of entities, ones that I don't really need to use, like return power, power factor. I don't have a solar system, so the return power doesn't matter to me. And some of the other settings I don't really need. But you can undisable them, or if you want to disable something you don't need, you can simply click on it and click disable entity. That way you have less entities that you don't use clogging up your list when you're making automations and whatnot. So that's something that you can do if you want. So the ones we're going to be using today are the phase energy sensors and the phase power sensors. Now, to show the difference between power and energy, I'll just go to our main test page, and you can see here that the power is instantaneous power in watts. And if we look at our Shelly device, we can see here that it is showing power right here on this screen at the moment. So that's the power, and it just keeps going up and down with variations in load in your property or your house. Now the energy sensors continue to accumulate, so they just continue to go up and up and up. So this one here is actually over a 2-day period, and this is over a 24-hour period. And you can see all the different devices in the house turning on and off, like the air conditioner and the pool, and you can see here at night time, this is the night time, you can see little dips. That's the fridge turning on and off during the night. So that's the difference between power and energy. So what we use in a utility sensor is actually the energy sensor, and the utility sensor just takes this energy and adds it to the time period that you set up. So let's before we do that though, we're going to see how we can take each of these phases and add them together, as the Shelly doesn't actually put out this information here, the main accumulated one, so we've got to create it in Home Assistant. To do that, we're going to have a look at Visual Studio Code or any editor that can edit our configuration files. I prefer Visual Studio Code, and if you want to install it as well, you simply come into Supervisor and go to the add-on store, and I am running in the most current as of today version of Home Assistant. I'm running 2021.3.2 is what I'm running right now, but I believe that this might be installed with default. If it's not, this repository, you can install it up here. It's called the add-ons community. That's the name of the repository, and you can simply paste that in there and do add if it's not there. But it's in this repository here that you will find Visual Studio Code, and it's simply a click to install it, so it's not difficult at all, and add it to your sidebar and start it. You have to start it as well, have it running. Anyway, we're going to jump across into Visual Studio Code, and there's not really any setup we have to do. Now we have to have a sensor.yaml file and a utility meter.yaml file, and we also have to have it in our configuration file. So we have the sensor one here, and we've included the file, and we also have the utility meter just here, and we've included that YAML file. And so we're going to have a look at the sensor first. Okay, so what we've got here, it adds up all the sensors. So these are the sensors that we get from our Shelly device. So that's created by Home Assistant. We don't have to do anything when we install the integration. They're the power sensors and the energy sensors. And so all we're doing is just adding them together with this template here. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, I've got this availability template here, and I've put that in there because I had a bit of trouble without it there. I had a bit of trouble with it glitching out every now and then, because the utility sensor is supposed to keep its state from startup to startup, so you should just work all the time. But I found, and I'll just show you here, on these days, it glitched out and added the entire total to my daily energy, and also added it to my monthly energy, which sort of stuffs everything up. Now you can adjust it with the calibrate service call, but it messes up this graph here, and it just makes it difficult, and you want it to work all the time. So hopefully, I believe that having this availability template here means that the utility sensor won't use it until it's fully set up and ready to go. The power one's not as important to have it because it just changes from minute to minute. So that's our total power. It just adds all the phases together. Now our final one here is the daily cost sensor. So if we jump across here, we can see here that today I've used $6.60 so far, and it's going to keep accumulating. And that's a simple equation in here. I've just got my unit cost for the power, which is 26 cents per unit. I've got my daily supply charge, which is 93 cents per day, and I've just used the energy that I've used so far this day to calculate how much I've spent in energy. So that's pretty straightforward. Now this actually uses the utility meter sensor, so we'll go and have a look at that right now. So we've got our daily one, which I've got displayed on my main page, and a monthly one as well, just to keep a track of how much we're using per month. Now with the monthly one, it would be more appropriate perhaps to set it up so that it was in line with your bill. So most people get their bills bi-monthly. So bi-monthly is actually a choice that you can choose in the cycle. And you can also go down to quarter of an hour cycles if you want to. But I've just got the daily one here. And if you check out the blog, there'll be some more information on how to set up dual tariffs and how to adjust these sensors. Because at the moment, what they do is they start in the middle. They start at midnight. It resets, and then it will start adding up. This one will start adding up for the day, and this one at the first of the month at midnight, it will start adding up for the month. and then at the end of the month it'll reset again. But you can have an offset so it starts at a different period in the month or the day. But yeah, check out my blog. The link's down below to get more information on that. Okay, so we'll go back across to our home screen. Now I've found that these two bits of information are, for me, the most useful. Seeing how much power I'm using right now at this moment in time, and sort of seeing the power usage go up and down. It sort of helped me to like look and see what's running and what doesn't need to be running, so I've turned it off. And also this one here, which is sort of doesn't look quite right because of these glitches that I've been having, messing around with the availability. But normally that would sort of show a chart of what I'm up to today, which is 21 kilowatt units. And the previous day I've got 29, 25, 22. And that often goes in line with the temperature because the air conditioning is the biggest load in my house. Now this daily utility sensor, this is a daily utility sensor just here. It keeps a track of today, what today's up to, and also what yesterday was. And that's all it stores. So that's yesterday's value, and that's what we're up to so far today. And at midnight it will reset and start again. Now if you want to keep a track of daily energy usage over a longer period of time, you'll need to use something else. You'll need to use a database like Influx to keep a track of that information, because this only keeps those two pieces of information. And of course we have the monthly one, which I haven't made use of in my dashboard as of yet. So we've got our monthly energy sensor just here, and we can see that it's glitched out unfortunately because of the availability of the sensors, but hopefully that won't happen next time. Now I will say that with these utility sensors, when you first set them up, you have to wait for them to sort themselves out. Initially they won't have the complete information, and so you have to wait until the period resets, so at the beginning of the month or the beginning of the day, before it will start to show something that makes sense. So you just have to be patient with them and they will come good, and they should sustain themselves over restarts of Home Assistant. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is the graphs that I've used. Now these graphs are the Lovelace Mini graph card, and they look pretty cool. They are better than the standard ones that come built into Home Assistant, which are these ones here. These ones here actually do use the history in Home Assistant, so once you've set them up, it goes back as far as you've set the time period. So this one here, this is a 24-hour time period, and it's just grabbed all the history and put it on the graph. These graphs here won't do that. They won't go back and look at the history. They actually will start recording and keep a track of it. So you sort of have to wait for them to fill out, especially if you've got one that goes over a few days, or you have to at least wait over the time period that you've set. So if we have a look at the main screen here, you can see that this is a bar one from this add-on here, and it has the 7 days, and it shows each day the maximum of the energy used. And then this one here is the graph one, and that shows, I think that's a 24-hour period just here, and it shows how much power has been used instantaneously over that 24-hour period. So these graphs do look a bit cooler than the ones that are built in, and they are this one just here. Now to install it, the easiest way is to use Hacks, which I do have installed, but if you don't want to install Hacks, or if you haven't installed it yet, there's the manual way, so you can simply copy it across into your config file. And there's also this way here, command line install, which isn't too difficult to do if you have Visual Studio Code installed. All you have to do is grab that, copy it, and then come over to Visual Studio. We can open up a terminal, so just here, and we can paste that in there, and that will actually install it. So I've got it installed already, so I'm not going to do that. I'll just get rid of that, close that down. But that's the three ways you can do it. And if you do it manually, you have to also add the resource into the configuration. So that's this URL here, and it's a module type, and you add that in under configuration, Lovelace dashboards and resources, and you can simply do add new resource. You'd paste that in there and choose the type, which is that there. So that's, you'd have to do that as well if you manually install it, but as you can see, I already have it installed just here. So if you want to use that add-on card, that's how you need to install it. So it's pretty easy to install, it's not complicated. And then of course all the YAML that you will need will be on my blog, on my webpage, and there's all information here if you want to do changes, and it's got a lot of settings that you can make. If you have got use the GUI to set it up, we can do edit dashboard and come into here and do edit, and we can select the card that I've got, which is this one here, and as you can see we've got it just set up in there. So you do have to set it up using YAML for the cards to work, but they will show up and you can visually see the changes that you're making as you go. So it's not too difficult to do, but it's a little bit more complicated than the standard Home Assistant cards that are available. Anyway, that's a quick rundown of the Shelly, the installation process, how to quickly set it up in Home Assistant, and it was slightly different to the way I did it the first time. I think it's probably better using the utility sensors, and I think the last time when I made a video, the utility sensor didn't work quite as well. It wouldn't keep its value over the startups. So that has been improved now, so it should be a much better way of doing things. I'd like to thank you all for watching the video. Thanks for supporting the channel, and if you liked what you saw, please think about subscribing, and if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. I'll catch you next time. Bye.